Sarah Elliott is Vermont born and raised. The 25-year-old hails from Barton. When she was just a baby, her parents were told that Sarah was a dwarf, but she says she never really fit in. Sarah's here tonight to talk about her journey and her recent trip to the Little People National Convention. Thanks for being here so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just start at the beginning. Tell me about your story of diagnosis. How old were you?
I was born with severely bilateral clubbed feet, so the doctors called in a geneticist to find out really why, and they kind of made the diagnosis of hypochondroplasia because of the measurements of my bones. Just everything was kind of smaller.
Right.
So my parents were given that diagnosis, and that was it. I went through my whole life believing that diagnosis because that's what I was told.
Right. And you had a surgery on your feet, right? Tell us about that.
My feet were severely clubbed, so they were pointing inwards. So starting when I was like a couple weeks old, they did tapings and then castings, and then when I was 7 or 8 months old, they did my first surgery to straighten the feet.
Now, you said your diagnosis has recently changed. Tell us about that. You were telling me before there's 200 kinds of dwarfism.
Yep, there's 200 different types. They all kind of fall under different categories. There's short-limbed, short like torso, there's proportionate dwarfism. So I went to an LPA, Little People of America, regional event in March. It was my first time going to the full event. I had been to previous events and I never really fit in. So.
And why do you say you don't fit in?
Because I'm tall. For a person with dwarfism, I'm actually on the taller side.
And how tall are you?
I'm 4'8".
Okay. And what's the average size?
I would say like 4 foot.
So even at these conferences, you felt like you didn't fit in?
Yeah, in a way. I was pretty much a foot taller than most of the people that I met, so it wasn't like an outcast feeling, but it was just an interesting feeling because I was tall, and when I would speak to people, I had to look down rather than looking up, which is what I'm used to doing. When I talk to anybody where I live, I have to look up. So looking down was an interesting feeling.
So at the National Convention, what made you say, maybe I should go see another geneticist?
I had gone to an event in March, and all of the people in my district, we're in District 1, they said, you know, have you seen a geneticist? Have you been followed by a geneticist? And I said, no. I was given a diagnosis, and I went with that. So I did go see a geneticist at Dartmouth, and right off she said, you know, I'm really not convinced that it's hypochondroplasia. You definitely have a skeletal dysplasia because you're short. She said, but, you know, one of your toes is kind of small, and the way that your joints are just so stiff, I don't think it's that. So they had a whole skeletal survey done, 20 x-rays, sent to Los Angeles, and 2 weeks before I went to Washington, D.C., I got a letter saying that my diagnosis is MED, which is multiple epiphyseal dysplasia.
So how does the change in diagnosis change the way you live, or does it not?
It doesn't really change anything, except it explains why I have degenerative arthritis in my weight-bearing joints and why my joints are so stiff. I don't have very good range of motion. I'm not flexible at all, and I have pain in my joints, and it was never explained as arthritis. And then as I got a little bit older, in my early 20s, they started throwing out arthritis, and I was like, I'm 20-something years old. I don't have that, but I do in fact have bone-on-bone arthritis in my knees. I've had both of my hips replaced when I was 23.
What do you think some of the common misconceptions are about dwarfism?
This could be a whole hour talk.
All different.
Yeah, I guess that I am sometimes looked at like I'm a child or not as an adult. Like I substituted in schools, and kids would say, you know, shouldn't you be in 2nd grade? And it's hard for them to get across that I'm as tall as a 2nd grader, but I'm their teacher and I am in charge of them. So I get looks, and you know, people in my community have known me forever, so it's mainly people that don't know me that look at me and say, you know, the M word. The M word, midget, it's not a very nice word. It's derogatory in the little people world. But I guess the a misconception to be that a little person can't do things that an average-sized person does, but.
Right. But you're showing us differently. Sarah, Elliott, we appreciate you being here and spreading awareness about dwarfism. Thanks so much.
And that's what I want to do.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.